Welcome. In this video, we're going to give a quick tour of the MongoDB demo job to talk about how we perform some common operations and some of the slight differences that Mongo introduces with their workflow as compared to using a standard SQL solution. So we're looking at a blank screen here. That's because we're going to go into our virtual machine here, and we're going to use Windows for this particular demo. So first things first, I do have a nice little application that's made by the developers of Mongo called Compass. This allows us to actually get into the collections that we have and see what they are. So we have a collection called RackForms, and within there FB demo, and so we kind of see what this looks like. I have a command line tool open here. This is kind of nice. It is just showing whenever we have a command go through, which can be useful for debugging if you're new to MongoDB, just to see did an actual query go through. So kind of running that. And then we have RackForms, where we have the job that we're about to look at right now resides. So as you may have already seen, in this particular job, we have I guess you would call it a basic demonstration of the dropping, writing, reading, and deleting data, as well as updating from a Mongo collection. And this is just a kind of a, you run this page once and it's going to perform all those operations for you. And the idea is that when you select one of these guys, for example, dropping a collection, you just you can see how we've configured it on our end right here. So in other words, you can see that my database is MongoDB. I provided the name and the collection name, and then I'm just issuing a drop collection right here. And so that will, in other words, take this collection and drop it. We then go through and we perform a write, where we essentially are going to create a new collection on the fly with the same name notice. We're just kind of resetting this every time we run it, and then we're going to insert those values right there. So on and so forth, we kind of go through there. But where this video comes in is, instead of us just kind of going bang, bang, bang through these various scenarios, we're actually going to be taking real data from a form, writing it, and then updating it. And so again, some of the few things that are specific to MongoDB that deal with that. So let's kind of start with the writing data to the form. So I can see right here in my the document viewer right here, I already have a couple items in here. I'm actually just going to delete these guys just so we kind of start fresh here, just so you can kind of see how this works from scratch. So starting from scratch, we are going to take a field called email, and the user is going to press submit, and we're going to go to the submission page right here. We are then going to have a database query, and the query is going to take that email field. Actually, we're going to create an email field in our collection, and the value is going to come from the token f email. So if you haven't seen tokens in RackForms before, we have some demo jobs that you can find that actually talk about those. So a basic tour, start learning here. We have using tokens. Basically, I have a capital F because this is a form field with the name email. So F, and then in between the two braces is the word email, which matches the name of the field right here. And so what this is going to do is, as opposed to these write operations, so let me go back to this one right here, where we're just writing basically a string, so kind of wrapping this in the array construct right here, we are going to use a token. So we're going to use a dynamic value in this write operation right here. So write to the collection, as we can see right here, the FB demo collection, a field called email with this specific value. When we do that, one of the things that we want to actually have happen is we want to get the unique identifier that is going to be returned from that interaction. So whenever you write a record to Mongo, it's going to create an ID field for us, and that ID field is unique, and so I want to pull that out so that I can actually use that in the update operation. So we do that by selecting our database item, and under return last insert ID / affected rows, I'm just going to check that box. And what this is essentially going to do is it's going to mean that that query name, so notice how we're querying a database to $Q1, Q1 is now going to contain that ID value. So the Mongo ID is equal to the value that I'm returning right here. And then I'm going to assign that to a session variable, session ID, so that I can actually use that in the next page of my form. So write the value using a token, and then because we have return last insert ID selected, we're going to go ahead and take that Q1 value, again, this is just the name of the query. We could change this to like, I don't know, insert query or something, but by default RackForms just calls it Q1. So we're going to assign that to the session variable right here. Now, when we want to read existing data then, what I want to do is I want to query based on that session ID. So now you'll notice that we have a slightly different query mode right here. We're going to query this as opposed to this guy which was inserting it. But you notice the structure is very similar right here. So I'm actually just going to copy this over just so you can kind of see. So in the insert method right here, I was saying grab me the field or insert a field called email with this particular value right here. So I was using the F token to grab a form field. Well, in this particular case, we're using the query, and the structure is grab me the field called ID where the ID is equal to this value. And the S right here is just session. So we have form fields, F tokens, and we have session tokens for S right here. And so that is going to grab the value, again, that we've inserted right here, that unique identifier, and it's going to use that to grab the value. The last component to this particular page then is we probably want to fill in the form field that we have right here with that value, right? Because otherwise this wouldn't be a very useful update page. So we do that using the token in the form of this right here. Basically, when we query something from Mongo and it returns a result set back to us, it's once again going to put it into a variable that's the name of the query. So in other words, result set variable name is Q1. So that's what this is right here. And we're basically saying take the result set called Q1 and then grab the 0, 0 indexes, so in other words the first row, the first collection, and grab me the email field, right? So I'm writing a field called email right here. Now I want to grab that email field right here. And so this isn't Mongo right here. This is more just how RackForms kind of parses and returns the result set back to you. And by the way, you can actually see the results at any time by doing a data dump. So by default, when I create a database item like this, it's just no debug / production. But if I want to see what's actually being returned, which we'll do here, you can see that this token, of course, makes sense for what we're grabbing. There's going to be a variable, and you'll actually see this printed off on the screen. There's going to be a variable, and then within the 0, 0th index array, there'll be a field called email. And so we'll use that as the pre-populated value right here. Then finally, when we want to update the existing ID right here, we're going to issue 2 queries using the query mode of update 1. So how does this actually work? Well, again, we saw right here that when I want to insert a value, I'm going to query that value based on the ID property right here. Well, if I want to update a value, I probably want to do the same thing, right? Like I want to grab the value that came from the database, and that's based on this session ID that we got from the original insert up here. So then, now that I've grabbed the appropriate row, we issue the update value. And so again, this is just simply saying, take the email field and populate it with whatever value I have from the form field called email update. And again, you'll notice when I mouse over this field right here, it's email underscore update. And so that's what it is. Obviously, I talked a lot right here, this may even seem really confusing. It is a little bit of legwork at first, but what's nice about this is as complex as it gets. After we mastered this process of just selecting the query mode and just kind of managing how we're either going to write data or query it based on some ID, doing more fields is just literally doing things like adding a new record or a new property to insert. Like in other words, it's the same thing over and over again. It's actually a little bit boring. It's not very interesting once you've done it once or twice, but it's just mainly kind of getting to grasp, again, selecting the query mode and knowing, am I going to write something? If I am, what token am I going to use to write that value in, right? In this case, again, F email, or am I going to read something? And if I am, then what am I basing that read off of? Well, probably a primary key or an ID like we're doing right here. So enough talk, let's just actually see how this thing works. So I'm going to go ahead and run the first page of this form. And I'm going to put in a sample email value, so sample@yahoo.com. And I'm going to submit this. You'll actually see here again that the database will show that we're going to have a command come in. And so now we've returned this Mongo ID for that particular record. So we can actually go in here and we can see that I have an object with this ID right here. Notice the 2 match 5897, right? So the string matches. So this is the object that was just inserted. This is the unique key. And so now we can use that to our advantage. So we can go to the update page. And when we do, we're going to query the database. Make this a little bit bigger here. again, we're going to query the database, and we're going to do so based on the fact that session, this S token, has that unique ID. So go ahead and query and return based on that. So that's what we're doing right here. Notice here also that we're doing that data dump. And so here you can kind of see the way this data forms out. Again, it's a variable called Q1 that's zeroth array contains, in our case, a field called email. And so that's why we have this token in this format right here, $Q1 right here, 00 right here and right here. They're both arrays. And then I'm going to grab the email field from that last array right there. And because I now have this, I can change the value to something new like this. And when I submit it, we're just going to update the existing data. We can see it's been affected in the database. So sample new right there. And the reason why that happened is because on this query, we said update a single record. Well, what record do we want to update? Well, we're going to query it first. So it's the ID that equals that session variable right here. And then the new value that we put in is going to be to the email field, and it's going to be f email update. Just as a quick aside, there's literally nothing stopping us from just changing this to a raw string and just saying this right here. So in other words, to this collection right here, we're going to go ahead and just add a new value. So I can actually do that real quick. I'll just save this and I'll hit submit. Now it doesn't matter what the form had, but as far as the database is concerned, the email is now equal to this value right here. And we could even, of course, change this to, I don't know, some new field, right? So the beauty of NoSQL is you can just change essentially the data that's stored in there on the fly. So a lot of flexibility right here to basically create the type of logic that we want. So any questions or comments, as we always say, please let us know at info@rackforms.com. Always happy to answer those questions. And happy NoSQLing. Thanks for watching.